Hey Finxters! Now in today's lecture, we will be discussing something very interesting. We will convert a list consisting of date-time strings into a list consisting of date-time objects. Now what do I mean by date-time strings? Let's go ahead and execute this piece of code. And as you can see that each date-time string in the given list is of the type str. That means this date-time value here is of the type string. Now our task is to go ahead and convert this type into a date type object instead of a string. Now you might want to do this because you may want to store this in a database wherein you want the date time values to be in the form of date time objects, or there may be any other reason you want to do so. So how will you do that? Before we discuss how we will be doing that, let's have a look at this piece of code itself. Now what we have done here is we have used the enumerate method. Now why did we use the enumerate method here? That's because enumerate will help us to keep a count of each iteration. That's why the enumerate method was used here. Otherwise you could have simply used for I in dt, where dt is the list consisting of all the date time values. That would have simply printed each string. Now the purpose of using the count variable here was to get an output like this, wherein we will be able to visualize the output better here. So as you can see, because of the count variable that we have here, so we could print each date time value and we could number them serially. So in order to get the values in a sequential manner, we use the enumerate method to keep a track or count of each iteration. But that is not the point here. The idea here is to convert these string values to date time values. So without further delay, let us dive into the solutions or the ways we can do this. A very convenient way of solving our problem is to use the datetime module in Python and then use its strp method. So let's quickly learn what is the strp method. Simply put, strp time is a method of the datetime module which will help you to convert a given datetime string into a datetime object. Let's have a quick look at the official documentation and let's see what it says about strp time. strp time is a method of the datetime object that will help you to parse a string into a datetime object given a corresponding format. So that is exactly what we need to convert our string datetime into the datetime object. So let's see how to do that. We will first go ahead and create an empty list. Now I'll tell you why I'm creating this empty list object. Let us proceed with the code and you will automatically understand what is the use case of this empty string object. Actually, this is the object wherein we will be storing the output strings or the output datetime objects. Now we need a for loop so that we can iterate across all the elements within our given list dt. It is now time to move inside our for loop and then deal with each string and convert it into a datetime object with the help of the strp time method. Now, in order to use the strp time method, you have to first go ahead and import it from the datetime module. So let us first go ahead and import datetime from the datetime module itself. Okay. Now we are ready to go. We will now simply go ahead and use our list object underscore dt, which is empty at this point of time. And then we will append the datetime objects within it one by one. So let's use object underscore dt dot append, and then within it we will pass each object or datetime object. So to do that, we have to use datetime dot and then our all important strp time method, which will actually convert the datetime string into a datetime object. And within the strp time method, we pass the string, which is I, and after that we have to specify certain formats. Now to understand this, let's have a look at the official documentation once again. So if you have a look here, the following is a list of all the format codes. So what are these format codes? Let's have a look at them one by one. Let's say initially we have %b. So this means it will convert month string to a month object, that is month as local's abbreviated name. Similarly, %d represents day of the month as a zero padded decimal number. So that's what we have used next. Similarly, %y denotes the year, and these right here are used to denote the time. So let's see that as well. So as you can see, %I, it denotes hour in the 12-hour clock as a zero padded decimal number. Then we have %m, which denotes the minutes, while %p, and that denotes or that is equivalent of either AM or PM. So if you have a look at each string here, then we have the month, then we have the day, then we have the year, and then we finally have the time, which has hours and minutes, and finally it is in AM or PM format. That is, we have the 12-hour clock format for the time. So these formats will help us to convert this string into a date time object. Finally, when we have all the date time objects stored within our list obj_dt, we simply need to go ahead and print the output list. So let's use a print statement which says after converting string to date time, and then we will print each date time object one by one. So let's simply go ahead and copy this and let's paste it, and instead of iterating across dt, we will now iterate across obj_dt and then print the values one by one. Now please remember, this type should be of the date time class, whereas this type was of the string class. So let's check that. Let's execute our code. And there we go. As you can see, after we have converted the strings to datetime objects, the class or the type of each datetime value is of the type datetime. So we have successfully converted the string values to the datetime objects. So this is how you can use the strp time method of the datetime module to convert a given string to a datetime object. Now, there are always more than one way to solve a problem. Hence, we will have a look at another way of doing this. So the module that we will be using now is known as dateutil. So let's go ahead and let's import dateutil. Rather, let's import parser from dateutil. So this is how we do it. From dateutil, import parser. Okay. Now I'll explain the use case of parser on the go. So as we did before, we once again need an empty list which will store the output datetime object within it. Then we use our for loop, and now we will append each datetime object one by one within this list. But now instead of using strp time, we will use parser.parse method. This will simply go ahead and convert the given datetime string into a datetime object. And the beauty of this method is that you do not have to specify all these formats. So this is a big advantage if you are not comfortable with using the formats, but it also has a downside. Please remember that parser is slower when it comes to time complexity or space complexity when compared to the strp time method. So that's the downside of the parse method. However, if you are not dealing with thousands or millions of time at one point of time, then you can definitely go ahead with this method and it will solve your purpose. So once you have converted each datetime string into a datetime object with the help of the parser.parse method, you need to simply go ahead and print the output. And that is what we have done exactly in this case. So let's see if this works for us. And there we go. As you can see, that we have successfully converted each datetime string to datetime objects. So that's it for the second approach of doing this. Now, there is always a scope of finding more than two solutions to your answer. So we will now have a look at a crazy solution, and trust me, solutions like these help us to become better programmers. So do not skip the third approach, because this is a very crazy way of converting the datetime string to a datetime object, but nevertheless, it worked perfectly and it will help you to reach the final output. So let's see how we can do that. So what I'll do is that I'll explain you the final method of doing this step by step. So please follow along. Initially, we have to once again take the help of our datetime module. So let's say from datetime, import datetime. We have now imported our datetime module. Then we go ahead and print each date time string within our list dt. And now the actual game begins. We will now convert the date time strings to date time object and print the output accordingly. So let's use a print statement to differentiate between the input and the output. Now we will use a dictionary by the name month. And what does month store? It stores the month and their numeric equivalence in the form of key value pairs. Now you will soon understand why I need to do this. But for now, please note that I have a dictionary month which stores key value pairs such that the key represents the abbreviation of the month, which is, for example, let's say if this was the date time string, then Jan is the key while 01 is its value. Now, as you might have guessed, that we need these numeric values instead of Jan in this method. Let's move on to our next step. Our next step is once again to create an empty list which will store the output. So I named it dt underscore obj. It's now time to iterate across all the values within the given list dt. So let's do that with the help of a for loop for I in dt. Now this is where things get interesting. I am using a variable by the name month underscore str, and within it I will store each month. So Jan, July, August, December, these are the values that will be stored within month underscore str. So how do I do that? To do that, I simply go ahead and split this entire string into different elements such that the first element is Jan, the second element is 1, the third element is 2005, and so on. So before we do anything else, let's go ahead and let's check what happens when we simply print this out. That is when we simply split the date string and then extract the first value from it. Rather, I would say let's go ahead and let's first split the given string and then let's see what happens. So to check that, let's use a print statement and within it, let's print month underscore str. Now let's execute this. And as you can see that now we have successfully separated each value in the given date time string as single or individual elements within the list. So this is one element, this is another element, this is the third element, then this space is another element, then this is another element. So that's how it has been stored in month underscore str. Now I simply need this value, that is Jan. So how will I extract that? To extract that, I'll simply say, hey Python, please extract the first element which is given by the index 0 from this list. And now let's print this and let's see what happens. And as you can see, we have now successfully extracted each individual month one by one. So that was the purpose of using month underscore str. Wonderful. Now let's move on to our next step. We will now use a variable k, and let's say that k is a string such that we will store something within it. So what's that something? Let's see. So we will simply go ahead and convert this given string. So if you have a look at this string, then it is of the form month, day, or the date, and then the year. So December 28, 2000. But we will store this in the form of YY. So this means we want the output to be 2000. Then we need month, which will be December. And then we need the day, which is 28 in this case. Now please note I am taking the example of the last date time string in this case. One more thing to be noted here is that we don't want December to be DEC or the abbreviation of December here. We want it to be 12. We want the numeric equivalent. And this is why we created month underscore str. So now you know why we need this. You'll further understand why we need to convert it in this format when we move to the next step. Before we move to the next step, let's go ahead and complete this step. So how to do this? Actually, this can be done in a single line, but for our convenience, we'll simply go ahead and create another variable by the name month underscore num, and within it, we will store I dot replace. Now, what the replace method will do is that it will help us to replace a string or a certain character within our string with the character that we specify. And we want to replace Jan or any other month whose abbreviation is within the given date string with its numeric equivalent. To do that, we will simply say replace month underscore str. So what was month underscore str? It stored the abbreviations of the months. So let's say if we are taking the first date string, then this will be Jan. So we want to replace this with its numeric equivalent. And what is its numeric equivalent? Its numeric equivalent is 01. And how do we get 01 in this case? To get 01, we need our dictionary month, and from it, we need to extract this value 01 for which the key is Jan. And Jan is stored within month underscore str. So month underscore str will be the key. So we are simply replacing Jan with 01 in the first case. Similarly, whatever month we have in the given string, it will be replaced by its numeric equivalent. Okay, we have now replaced the given month by its numeric equivalent. Now let's move inside our str method, and within it, let's tell Python that we want the date format to be in this way. So how do we extract the year? Quite easy. We already extracted the month. So extracting the year would be something similar. We just have to make changes to this index. So to better visualize that, let's go ahead and let's first have a look at what is stored within month underscore num in each case. So let's execute this. And there we go. As you can see that month underscore num has now 01 instead of Jan. And then everything is as it was in the first case. So we will now use this month underscore num, and then we will extract each value from it one by one. So let's move inside our str method and let's say we want month underscore num dot split, and we want to extract the year. So the year is at the second index. So this is the first index, this is the second index, and this right here is the third index. And indexing starts from 0. So this will be 2. Well, we have now the year first. Now we want the month. So once again, the month is in the first place. So that means we have to extract the value from the first index, which is given by 0, since indexing starts with 0. Finally, we need to extract the date, and the date is at the first index. So we simply go ahead and extract the first index. Now let's see what's stored within k. Let's print k before we proceed further or before we do anything else. And there we go. As you can see that we have successfully stored the date time string in the form of year, month, and date. Now let's insert a dash between each value so that we can differentiate between the month, date, and the year. But this only gives us the month, the date, and the year. We also need the time. So to get the time, we will simply once again go ahead and concatenate a space between these two expressions, and then we will split our month underscore num and extract its last element. So what was its last element? Its last element was at the third index, which was our time. So this is what will be extracted. Now, are you confused? Please do not be. I'll show this once again to you. Let's print k as well as let's print month. Rather, let's print month underscore num. And now when we print both of these together, you'll be able to visualize what's happening. So there we go. So what we essentially did was, this was month underscore num. Then we extracted each element from month underscore num and rearranged them in the form of year, month, and date. Then we extracted this element or the last item from month underscore num, and we also concatenated it with this string. So we now have the date time in this format. Well, all the hard work has been done. All we need to do now is to convert this string k into a datetime object. So we will append the datetime object to the date dt underscore obj list. So let's use that dt underscore append. And now we will use our date datetime module dot and now a method known as from ISO format. This will help us to convert the given datetime string to a datetime object. Now you might be wondering, we did so many things before, but we could have simply used this method instead of doing all the rubbish that we followed so far. But no, there is always a reason behind doing something. From ISO format method accepts the date time string in a certain format. And that certain format is this. So ISO format accepts the date in this format and the time in this format. So that's why we needed K. Now, if you have a look at the string K, then you'll note that we have the time such that it has the hours and the minutes, but we don't have the seconds. So I'll go ahead and attach the seconds and I'll say that it is 00 for the sake of this code. Well, that should resolve our issue. Now, before we proceed further, let's go ahead and let's print K once again and let's check the format of K to visualize the output in the next steps. So this is the value of K. And now we will simply pass K within our from ISO format method. Well, that's it. Now we simply have to go ahead and print the output. And we have done this quite a lot of times. I guess this should be dt underscore obj. Yeah, that's the object within which I was storing the output. Well, that's it. Now let's check if this works or not. Oh, we have an error. Well, I know why the error occurred. This is because the date string should be in this format 010502. So this should be the format of the date string. Now I'm guessing that the date string is in this format because this is the standard way of representing dates and times. So I hope that this should not be an issue. Now let's check if this code is working or not. And there we go. Oops, I think I have once again printed the value of K within each iteration. Yeah. So let's comment this out to visualize the output in a better way. And there we go. Finally, we have the output that we want. So as you can see that this now represents a date time object, whereas the actual list had date time strings. So we have successfully converted the string into a date time object. Phew, that was quite a code. Anyway, now I hope that after you have finished this code, you already know how to use the split and the replace methods in a better way, because this is an actual implementation of this method which can be put to use. And this is how, well, that was enough for this lecture. I hope you learned something from it. If you have any queries, please mention them in the comments below, and I'll try my best to answer all your queries. Thank you.